Donald Trump is threatening to send the U.S. military into an American city. The president says he's prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act, a rarely used 1807 law that allows a president to deploy active duty U.S. troops on American streets.
Welcome to today's episode, and today's story centers on the escalating political rhetoric following crashes connected to federal immigration enforcement in Minnesota. So, President Donald Trump has publicly threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act through his Twitter account. So, raising serious legal and political questions about federal authority, state power, and the limit of presidential action. So, it's important to also separate what was said, what has not happened, and what the law allows. So this was a tweet. It has not happened yet. So what really happened? So overnight protests in Minnesota, Minneapolis, that is, so erupted following ICE enforcement operations. So demonstrators opposed the federal actions, and confrontations with law enforcement followed. So federal officials described the situation as dangerous, citing threats to agents and federal property. And the state and local officials, however, said the unrest, while tense, remained under control and did not rise to the level of an insurrection. Yes, so the tweet from President Trump in response, Donald Trump stated publicly that he would consider invoking Insurrection Act of 1807 if Minnesota officials failed to restore what he described as law and order. So the key point is the Insurrection Act has not been invoked. So no federal troops have been deployed under this law. So what exists right now is a political threat and warning, so not an executed order, so to be clear.
Not the National Guard, not the local police, the military. That's what's alarming people. Unlike police or ICE officers, soldiers are trained for combat, not civilian crowd control. They don't operate under the same rules, and once troops are deployed, the stakes escalate instantly. This threat comes as clashes intensify in Minneapolis, following the fatal shooting of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE officer. Tear gas, flashbangs, and fireworks have already turned protests into nightly flashpoints.
Well, so let's talk about what the Insurrection Act is, so that we can all be on the same page and understand the depth of this. So the Insurrection Act is, it gives a president the authority to deploy federal military forces inside the U.S. in extreme circumstances, so such as rebellion or a complete breakdown of civil order. So historically, it has been used everywhere. Primarily during the school desegregation in the 1950s and 1960s, the 1992 Los Angeles riots. So that is a lot of years back. So the legal experts widely agree that the threshold for invoking this law is very high and controversial when applying to protest rather than armed rebellions. Yes, so well, the response from the Minnesota officials, the leaders strongly rejected the idea of federal military intervention. So they argue the local and state law enforcement are capable of managing the situation, and warn that invoking the Insurrection Act could escalate the tensions rather than reduce them. And some officials have also suggested legal challenges could follow if federal forces were deployed without state consent.
points. Supporters argue invoking the act could restore order fast. Critics warn it could make an already volatile situation far more dangerous. There is precedent. The last time it was used was 1992, when President George H.W. Bush sent troops into Los Angeles during the Rodney King riots, and even then, it was a last resort. And this is why this matters. Once the Insurrection Act is triggered, the line between civil unrest and military force disappears. And in a moment this tense, that line matters.
What could happen if Trump invokes the Insurrection Act in Minnesota? President Trump on Thursday tweeted this: "If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. Thank you for your attention, Donald J. Trump." And how do you feel about this?
Of course he should do this, and I don't even think he needs to invoke the Insurrection Act. It's funny how the New York Times avoids talking about the two most famous incidents of presidents sending troops against the wishes of a state's governor, Eisenhower sending them to Little Rock.
Well, so much of media coverage focuses on Trump's use of word insurrection. So supporters argue the threat is necessary to protect federal agents and enforce immigration law. So critics argue the language exaggerates the situation and risks normalizing military involvement in civilian matters. So it threatens Minnesota with insurrection. Threatening Minnesota with Insurrection Act actually reflects rhetoric but not action. So the recap of all of this: Trump threatened the use of the Insurrection Act. The law has not been invoked yet, and protests are tied to the ICE enforcement actions. So state officials oppose federal military involvement, and also some legal experts say the situation may not meet historical standards of the act. Yeah, so it is not yet invoked.
Because to walk 9 black school children into the school, why? Because they were disobeying federal law. It was a Supreme Court ruling, you can't discriminate. The governors, the mayors were saying, we're going to keep discriminating. And so Eisenhower sends, the 101st Airborne to walk these 9 black. And then JFK did the same thing in Alabama, directly against the governor. The governor called out his own national troops, George Wallace, famous name. That was to walk 2 students into University of Alabama. So we have 9 sad black students, 2 sad black students, and of course, the Constitution and federal law being violated, and they go down in history as heroes. Minnesota is violating federal law. Immigration law is federal. The Supreme Court has held this 1 million times. They did it, I'll just say briefly, because it's recent. I mean, I've been alive in America for more than 2 weeks. When Arizona passed that, what everybody called the Papers, Please law. You'll remember that. Oh, it's like Nazi Germany, which was upheld by the Supreme Court, at least that one provision. The rest of the law was overturned. All Arizona had said is, we want to comply with the federal government. We're going to help. We aren't going to do anything that federal immigration law doesn't say, but we're going to help enforce federal immigration law. Obama was president, and he sued saying, I don't want to enforce federal immigration law. The Supreme Court says, federal government wins. So absolutely he has constitutional authority to do this. And if you look at how the governor and the mayor are behaving, I mean, just today, I think the governor, Tim Walz, said, Minnesota is an island. Well, no, you're not an island from federal law.
Did he really say he's an island?
Yes. That's like seceding from the Union. Of course he should send federal troops.
To the patriots of the United States of America, it looks like our voices are being heard. As we're all waking up this morning to the news that our president, Donald Trump, has just left a clear message to the people in Minnesota that if agitators keep attacking federal officers, that he is going to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota. Which at this point, I would tell you that's exactly what they deserve. But understand this, that many of these people, many of these kids are paid to be there. They are on somebody's payroll. Follow the money, make the indictments. To the corrupt politicians over there, like your governor, Tim Walz, and to that disgusting, corrupt, incompetent mayor over there of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, do the right thing, stand down, and resign immediately. We, the Patriots, are asking for your resignation. Take responsibility for what you have done. Your hand or hands have all been caught in the cookie jar. And instead of taking accountability and owning what you have done, you enable protesters to take to the streets, agitate, attack federal agents, and now because of the both of you, people are losing their lives. Tim Walz, you are going to go down as the worst governor that this country has ever seen. Jacob Fry, watching you speak in the Somalian language with the people that possibly allegedly stole up to $18 billion out of your state, you are a traitor, son. You are a traitor to this country. That young lady, Renee Good, the one that lost her life to that ICE agent, that is on both of your hands. You have made many of these young people in Minnesota feel entitled, that they're doing the right thing, standing up for humanity against their very own citizens and protecting every illegal immigrant that came into this country as they can. I want to leave a clear message to the people of Minnesota that this is all a distraction. You are being played and you are being used to keep your eyes off the ball of corruption and the ball of collusion from your disgusting politicians that live in that state. It's time to back down now, go home and let those ICE agents do their job. Or you're about to find out what it's truly like to live your life as a true socialist, as all of your freedoms are about to be taken away.
Well, so finally, the situation highlights a broader issue, how political rhetoric alone can shift national tension. So even without this policy action, whether this threat was a serious legal consideration or a pressure tactic, the implications are significant. So the story is still developing. It was just a tweet, guys. So, and as always, context matters more than headlines. So as more come up, we will discuss it here and analyze it. I hope you guys understand. And also give your views on the comments section. Tell me what you think and always remain respectful. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.